Tonight on Life on the Rock, we have Ryan and Elizabeth Young from Camp Veritas. We'll see a video about their work and much more. Welcome to Life on the Rock. Tonight our guests are Ryan and Elizabeth Young. They run summer camps in different locations around the country for young people. It's called Camp Veritas, and it's about faith formation and helping the young people grow in their faith.
Yeah, it's about building discipleship and leading souls to heaven, but it's also kind of a spiritual boot camp. You know, a lot of times we're distracted on the phones, we're just bombarded by a secular world. But Camp Veritas is there to really form that Christian discipleship. So we're now going to a video featuring Camp Veritas. Well, Ryan and Elizabeth, welcome to Life on the Rock.
Thank you so much.
And you got exciting news you're bringing today to tell us about Camp Veritas. So what is that? What is Camp Veritas?
Well, Camp Veritas is a moment that we have to get out of our lives, to step out of our lives and look at our life from afar and say, am I on a path to heaven? What's my meaning? What's my point? It's in a place that enables us to have total immersion in our faith.
Yeah.
And it's a moment of pause, a pilgrimage. And so
it's really about building character and leading souls to heaven. But I wanted to ask you, as a married couple, what inspired Camp Veritas?
Well, about 15, 20 years ago, I mean, you go to Mass, you're praying, and over time and over the years, you see the numbers kind of dwindling, especially with young people and youth. And the grace, God has given me the grace to be able to go out throughout my life, and I take nothing for granted. I don't believe in any accidents. And every situation I see, it's kind of like, what am I learning from this? And so I had the opportunity to go to a Protestant camp on the West Coast called Hume Lake. Now, they've been operating for more than 50 years.
Yeah.
They have 2,000 kids come in every week, all summer long, for 10 straight weeks. That's 20,000 youth, right?
Yeah.
And at the same token, I was attending Youth 2000s in New York with the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal, and seeing what the effect that just prolonged exposure and presence of the Eucharist had on a soul.
Yeah.
And then you get to your walk with God. What is the point? You know, what are we actually striving for here? And the net sum of all of our efforts, of all of our energy, of all of humanity is simply the soul.
Right.
You know, what is a soul worth? And at that point, it's almost like there's a formula here that works. I know it works for the soul. You know, you go to enough of these retreats, you hear about people's life stories.
Yeah.
I never hear someone saying, I found the Lord, fell totally in love with him as I was sitting in 5th grade in a religious ed class, right?
Right.
They usually go out. They usually take that chance. They go away on this kind of a life adventure or pilgrimage.
Yeah.
And
at the same time, we had been visiting different churches across the country and noticing the average population of the church is getting older and older and older, and there are less and less kids present to make up, you know, the population, and there's just less population overall. So Ryan started to identify the problem at the same time as he's identifying that this could be a potential solution.
Yeah.
The problem is kids aren't returning to the church after confirmation.
Right. Yeah.
And some priests will tell us 90% might not come back.
right. So in that battle for the soul, right, you know, you got to think of where are we losing the most souls?
Yeah.
Well, the biggest hole in the bucket for souls is the day people are confirmed. Right. I found the second biggest hole in the bucket is the day you go to college.
Yeah.
Right? There's just a worldly bombardment on the soul.
It is.
Right? And we're giving away so much and taking for granted so much that someone else is going to tell our kid about Christ. We had this kind of idea that we were growing up in Christendom, right? And the last several popes have said that age is over. We're in a new apostolic age.
Right.
That we need to re-evangelize. We need to have a new evangelization. Pope John Paul II knew this. And with that, he had the same idea, which is as he was bringing his own youth up as a priest, he'd take them hiking, he'd take them skiing, he'd go on they'd be living in camping trips. They would go and he would bring them an adventure in the Lord with their Catholic faith. He'd show them beauty. And they loved it. They knew not only God at that point, they were able to step out. They knew what quiet meant.
Yeah.
They knew what relationships meant.
Yeah.
They hungered for those journeys with him, right? And so, you know, what we're trying to offer is this new evangelization at Camp Veritas, right?
I think that's so important. Even as I reflect on my own life, whenever I was looking at the video and everything, that in my own experience, just the role of retreats, of getting away from the world, all the distractions, and really it was on a retreat that I had my first experience with Eucharistic adoration. I really had no idea what that was, and that was all new to me. You know, a lot of times confession is offered. You hear great talks. You know, they're a lot of times just beautifully delivered. You know, and some of those talks still, reach me today. You know, even though I've been a religious like 11 years, I go back to a lot of those kind of early groundings in the faith, and I think that's so important, especially as we do live in an age of unbelief. You know, a lot of times there's a lot of confusion. We can become very robotic, you know, in religion and just going to church and just go through the motions. But it's not about that. It's about an encounter. It's about just having that love, that relationship with Christ.
Well, and it becomes intentional then.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
So, parents all over, are saying, look, I brought my kids to Mass every week. I sent them to Catholic school. They stepped out. They went to college and they're not going to Mass anymore. What happened?
Yeah.
What happened was you need intentional development of these kids.
You do.
Right? You need to make a choice of immersion again, and to have them challenge, and you got to bring it home to that dinner table and say, what are you talking about? What are you learning? Teach them yourself. Yeah. And again, if you were growing up in Christendom, which again is fading, you kind of hope that the Catholic school did it for you, or the priest at Mass did it for you. And we're at a point where it's no, the whole family needs to go on this pilgrimage. We need to go away.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we can make the pilgrimage fun.
That's exactly right.
Our recipe is play and pray. We know that these kids we can't tolerate 12 straight hours of talks.
I mean, Jesus himself had to do a miracle every 45 minutes, okay? So it doesn't matter if you're old or young. 45 minutes is the human, attention span. So, he would walk on water, he'd raise someone from the dead and then get back to it. Well, we're not doing that. But we have laser tag, and we got dodgeball and rope swings and lakes and, go-karts and talent shows and that kind of thing. So the kids never feel like they're in class, right?
But when we do surveys of the kids at the end of camp and we say, all right, you can name anything. It's never the food. What's their favorite thing? But what's your favorite thing, right? And it could be dodgeball, and it could be, go-karts and climbing walls and lakes and zip lines. And 100% of those surveys, the majority answer is adoration.
Wow.
A vast majority.
It could be anything. It could be my friends. It could be my counselors.
They could put anything. It's a blank, empty response. What's your favorite thing about camp? Adoration. What's your second favorite thing?
Mass. Yeah.
And so they
music.
They have a moment also away from cell phones. All right. So these weeks are a 1 week experience away from home, unplugged, no cell phone. Okay.
12 to 18-year-olds.
12 to 18. So it's the age of identity creation. Right. It's critical. Right. This is where they're going to learn about who they become. Their identity is then,
Well, we have to go to a break, but when we come back, we're going to get more into Camp Veritas and what's going on. So.
All right.
Right.
Ryan and Elizabeth, there's a lot of work going on with Camp Veritas, and actually the both of you have eight kids.
We do.
So you're raising a big family, but also putting this camp together. And I imagine you need a lot of grace to do that, just to make it all work in the Holy Spirit.
It's all him. Yeah, seriously.
But one of the things as parents too, I wanted to ask you, what do you see kind of causes young people to just fall away from faith?
Well, again, I mean, they're going through the motions to a great extent. And the problem is when they're in these classrooms, okay, they're learning about Christ as if he's Abraham Lincoln, right? It doesn't get into, I love this guy, right? The point of camp, again, is once they feel like, I love him, well, then going to class makes sense because you want to learn about him, right? Classes are good, okay, but they're difficult unless there's that early and forward fire for Christ. I want to know more about this guy I love. He died for me, right?
But I also think in this information age where kids have access to learn about everything and anything all the time, right? Especially teenagers and cell phones, they want to have ownership over their own faith. And so at camp, we want them to make that decision. We want them to choose to go to confession. We want them to take seriously their time in front of the Eucharist. And we want them to think about all week, if you had 10 seconds with Christ right in front of you, what would you say? And what would he say to you? And so we have them ponder that all week. And when that moment happens for them toward the end of the week, it is life-changing for them.
I think it's so critical, too, to form that intentional discipleship, especially among young people, because a lot of times I just know from my own experience in talking, a lot of times it's like a rediscovery. I mean, there is like almost just a new life birth. And it's like, man, how did I miss all this? And it's confusing, but at the same time, it's exciting. And you want to throw yourself into really the mysteries of faith and really take that leap of faith and say, what is really all this about? It is that journey, it is that pilgrimage. And so how does Camp Veritas really impact young people? What do you see them take away from it the most?
There's a few things I would say. The first is a very different exposure to religious life than they have in their normal parish, right? They might have a priest who has to hurry off and do a mass in another parish. They might not have that priest over to dinner like we used to do, back in the 50s. And so they don't know a priest personally. And when they're at camp, the priests, the sisters, they eat lunch with them. They play dodgeball with them. They beat them on the basketball court. They take hikes with them. And so they have this vocational awareness that they usually don't come in with. That's a new thing for them. The whole week they're living, without realizing it, the life of a religious. They have morning prayer, they have daily rosary, daily mass, adoration, praise and worship, testimonies, and they never complain that it's too much religion. It's like 6 hours of religious instruction a day, and there's never a complaint about that. But you could see yourself becoming a religious because you just did it for a week and you liked it.
Well, they also come out clear-eyed, right? So, I mean, they have their cell phone and they have this digital world and they have this just like this machine on them. And, so, and they can't just sit and like under a tree. And I mean, like first 2 days is almost like drug withdrawal, okay? Like the kids are like, I don't know if I could do this. There's an anxiety level, especially for ones that are brand new and especially the younger ones, right? They're like, I don't know if I could do this. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, what's that little gray thing hopping around the ground? That's a squirrel. Like, oh, there's the trees. Oh my gosh, like there's people here and I'm not even using my thumbs. Like, oh my gosh, now all of a sudden they start to seeing relationships, developing real relationships, not some fantasy online, and all of a sudden it's like they're bright-eyed, and they're ready to receive, they're ready to be quiet. And it's funny because when they leave that, there's like this seed that stays with them. They've been given the truth all week. Everything that they're then bombarded with, they can kind of be like, oh, that's a lie. Oh, that's a lie. Okay, that's a lie. Because the truth is going to stand. It doesn't have to run away. And so part of this is that we also tell the kids, look, there is one truth. His name's Jesus Christ, right? This is not some opinion poll. This is not I feel and my whole decision-making process is by my feeling of the hour. There's objective truth, and you either accept it and live in reality or you don't, and you're living in fantasy world, okay? And that goes from everything, those fruits, and we bring it out at camp. What are the fruits of that truth? Well, then you have confidence. Then you have know where you're going, right? Then when you speak, it's not your truth, it's the truth, right? And it's not just another kind of a blog or what editorial, So they start realizing, okay, that's great. And we run that through like the mottos of camp. I mean, one of them is, there is a God and I'm not him, right? And I said, there is a God, and they scream out, and I'm not him. You can't even start the journey of truth until you figure that one out, right? And so it's those kind of basic rooted things that these kids, eat up and want to get back to.
What also has them come back are the relationships that they form. So not only, they're now seeing 500 other Catholic teenagers. And for a lot of these kids, they don't get that at home. They have to go to this outer place to see that many people adoring Christ, that many people singing at church, that many people going to confession. They don't see that at home. And so all of a sudden it's sort of trendy to be Catholic.
Now, Camp Veritas is run by volunteers. And so if somebody wants to volunteer, how does somebody get involved?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, God keeps bringing us volunteers. I don't know anybody. She doesn't know anybody. We work in medicine, and we've always had the exact amount of guys come as campers, and the exact amount of girls. I mean, this is for now 14 years and 40-something camps, right? So God's department works great. They'd go to campveritas.com. Again, that's campveritas.com, where you just enroll. Now, we train you the first day before the campers get there, and so it's, we've already background checked you and all that usual stuff. And then usually a couple videos on the first run of training. So, but we take people of all ages, okay? I'm talking 18 to 90, okay? Wow. And because, just because you're older doesn't mean you're useless in this. I mean, you have a lot of viewers right now that are like watching the world burn. And they're like, what am I supposed to do? God, I'm praying. What am I supposed to do? There are no accidents. If they're watching the show, come to Camp Veritas, okay? And get online at campveritas.com and sign up, because that's the adventure that God's not going to put you and your life and your experience at the forefront of these kids' journey at this boot camp of the soul on the front line, okay?
So where is Camp Veritas going to be held this summer?
Okay, so the first one's in Ireland, the end of June. And then we have a camp in Maryland in Emmitsburg.
Okay.
We have one in Lake Placid, Florida.
Okay.
And then 2 camps in New York, one at Lake Champion in Glen Spey, New York, and the other in Wurtsboro, New York.
Okay. Well, that's all the time we have, but Ryan and
it
Elizabeth,
was
thank you
blessed.
for being on Life on the Rock, and God bless you in the work you do.
God bless
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. God bless.
Really loved that interview. A lot of humor.
Yeah.
That was a fun interview. And I guess what struck me, the first thing was just the power of adoration, the power of the Blessed Sacrament. And sometimes we focus so much on what we're going to say and do, forget about the powerful presence of Christ to convert and lead our young people to Him.
And when you're young, that is a new experience in many ways, just Eucharistic adoration, just coming before the Lord in prayer. And that is, God's grace is there for us. God is drawing us to Himself. And a lot of times, it is a mystery, but it's a mystery that we encounter. We're encountering a person, that is revealing Himself to us. And that's one of the beautiful things about this camp. Anytime you have a Eucharistic adoration, that's a joyful moment where there's a flood of graces coming on to the souls of young people.
Yeah, and I like, too, the theme of just being out in nature a little bit.
Yeah.
Detox from modern culture, slow down, see some of the natural beauty. It really is God's first word to us. It just speaks to our hearts and quiets us and opens them up. And I love the point, too, about them bringing all the different religious there and have that rhythm and life of prayer and helps them to consider a religious vocation that, this isn't crazy.
Yeah. There's pray and play. And there's a balance there, because you need both at times. Yeah. And but it's interesting, a lot of times young people, we don't have that encounter with the religious, maybe seeing a sense of humor and all that, where a lot of them are excellent musicians, I'm sure you'll find that at a retreat.
That was a big part of my own discernment, meeting all the people that come to EWTN and see happy, fulfilled priests. That this life, this vocation is a fulfilling one.
Oh,
and our young people need to see that. So I want to encourage them, and his pitch for volunteers was great. As you see all the problems in the world, you can jump in and volunteer and help them, help our young people that are so challenged today. So we'll send you to that vineyard with a blessing. May our Heavenly Father shine His face upon you. May He give you His peace. May He send His Holy Spirit to strengthen you and to guide you. And may God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We'll see you next week on Life on the Rock.
Blessed Mother, so pure and chaste, all that I have and do, I give unto you, magnificent and so full of grace. O Mother, I pray that today all of my desires may spring forth from you. I pray you'll never let me stray. Ave, Ave, Ave Maria. Angel voices ring in heaven as they sing.